Hello, everybody. It's Sam here. This is my very first book review video. I've been meaning to do this for a long time now, and finally getting it done. Um, yeah, I do have some other videos on my channel, and they're mostly keyboard covers for some songs. If you're into music, if you enjoy that kind of thing, um, please check them out, and let me know what you think. And that's our cat, by the way. Um, And yeah, so getting to it. Anyways, this is a list of books that I read in 2022. Um, they're ranked. They're not ranked in any way because they are books that I read from different genres. I like to try out different stories from different settings and themes. So they will be. I will be going them in the order that I read from January to December. I'll try to give a spoiler-free review for each of them, just so that I don't want to really talk too much on details on that. Anyways, going off with number one is Fire and Blood by George R. R. Martin. This is, as you can see, I still have a bookmark. This is the one book in my list that I still haven't finished reading. Um, I started this last year, January, and still have to get back to it. Hopefully one day I will finish it. For those who do not know, I just don't want to talk too much about this. This is basically set in the same universe as Game of Thrones. Um, this is the book that the recent House of the Dragon series is based on, and essentially it is a detailed history of the Targaryen dynasty, starting all the way from Aegon the Conqueror um, to well, this is part one of his Targaryen dynasty books. So this goes up to, I believe, some point in the middle of that dynasty. So, um, this, if you have read Game of Thrones, this does not go the same way as Game of Thrones does, where you have POV chapters with characters. You don't have these characters specifically you should be investing on. It's more of a um, sort of uh, you know it's basically a chronicle of the events that took place, revolving around each Targaryen. But it's still captivating. It's still interesting to read. Um, you do come across all the elements you came across when you're reading Game of Thrones, or when you were watching Game of Thrones, from betrayals, family drama, and all the other stuff. Um, so you'll come across all those themes that has been going down with the Targaryens. And I enjoyed reading it. Initially, I was a little hesitant. I wasn't sure whether I'd want to read this because it's a lot of information. It's like reading history, essentially. So this book is like, imagine if you were in the world of Game of Thrones. Like if you were in that world, reading this book is kind of like reading a history book in that world. So this book is supposedly written by a maester, um, basically just chronicling the dynasty all the way from Aegon the Conqueror and how he came to be, and like how he took over the Seven Kingdoms and whatnot. So I enjoyed it. It's a great read. If you are a fan of Game of Thrones, this will hopefully not discourage you in any way. And if you're one of those people who are still waiting for the if you're one of those people who are still waiting for the sixth book, then and you just want to read some Game of Thrones, you can just go right into this. And because the show is based on this, it kind of might give you some um, spoilers too. Um, yeah, so that's the first book that I've read. The second one is The Martian by Andy Weir. This one, wow, this is such a great book. Um, you guys probably have heard of um, the movie that was based on this book, which came out in 2016, starring Matt Damon, directed by Ridley Scott. Uh, Essentially, this is a science fiction book. What happens is this astronaut, well, it's a team of astronauts who goes to Mars on a mission, and one of them gets stranded there by an accident. The rest of the team, that they encounter like a sandstorm, and then one of them gets stranded there, and the rest of the team had to like go, and then they had to like leave their teammate behind because it's just they couldn't do anything. So this guy who gets stuck in Mars, he gets stuck, he survives, so he figures out a way how to survive in Mars, um, while trying to establish contact with Earth and figure out a way how to get back. Um, this book is very heavy with sci-fi details. It feels like this the way Andy Weir writes, he just delivers in he delivers information in such a way that it feels like this actually happened. Like there's so much scientific information. Um, if you're someone who is very much interested in astrophysics, if you're that kind of guy, if you're a very sciencey guy, you're gonna love this book. Um, but if you're not, it's still an enjoyable read. There are things that you might not understand, but the main character, the guy who gets stuck in Mars, he has a very funny sense of humor. The way he talks, he just keeps you engaged. Um, for those who are not very, if you're not a very sciencey guy, it might be a little struggle to get through this, but if you do, it's such a great, it's a great adventure in a way. Um, yeah, I don't want to get into too much detail with this. Um, Try it out and see how it goes. I got this book from a I got this book for like $3, which is such a good deal. Yeah, so that's the second one. The third book I do not have here. It's I borrowed it from a library and I gave it back, so I don't have the book here. It's Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. That is This is a book that anyone can read, in my opinion. So Norse mythology is basically about the Norse gods and that culture, the culture that the Vikings are known to associate. And some of the Norse gods, a lot of people would know, like Thor, Odin, Loki. But this book sort of goes into that actual mythology and talks about stories related to those gods and what they did. Now, you might think this might be a really tough read. It's not. It's just a collection of short stories revolving around those characters, and it's some of the stories are really fun, uh, really weird, and especially Loki. The things Loki does in these stories is just a little too extreme, and the things that Odin does is also questionable sometimes. But it's funny. It's a fun read, and because it's a collection of short stories, I think Neil Gaiman does a really great job uh, collecting, like just adapting from the real mythology and making it accessible to everyone to read. So and to gain a sense of like excitement and enthusiasm towards this whole culture and this whole pantheon of gods. I thought it was a great. Neil Gaiman is one of my favorite authors. I've read his, one of his greatest works, The Sandman comic run. Hopefully, at some point in the future, I might actually do a video on The Sandman if this works out. um, so that is Norse mythology. That's all I think I can say about Norse mythology. Yeah. So next, I think we do have, yes, we have a classic. This is a book that some of you guys might have heard of, might have already read. It's George Orwell's Animal Farm. Animal Farm. This is a really fun story. It's a really short book. It's how big it is. Um, it's got about like 10 or 11 chapters. That's it. It's a really fun story. Really easy to read. Um, Animal Farm is basically essentially what happens is there's a farm, there are animals in it, animals are talking. They basically take over the farm, they kick out the owner of the farm and then take over the farm, and then things happen after they take over the farm, and that's interesting to see. This book is basically like sort of mildly showing the Russian Revolution. If you're someone who knows about the Russian Revolution and the players of the revolution, what happened to the revolution, you can read this book and you can figure out who these characters represent. Like it's pretty obvious. But even if you do not know about the Russian Revolution, you can still read this book and it's just fun to read. It's just enjoyable. And if you're someone who wants to learn about the Russian Revolution, I think this is a great place to start. Um, yeah, it's about how I hate to get into it. It's about what happens after they take over the farm. That's where the interesting things start to happen. Um, essentially, revolution is what happens in this book, but animals are doing it. So yeah, this is a great read. And I'm hoping I'm actually planning to read 1989, I believe. It's George Orwell's The Other Book. At some point, I've heard that's a great classic, so definitely have to get into that later. The next one is also another classic. Um, it's Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray. This is it's another fun book to read. The writing style here is going to be a little tough, especially if you're someone who haven't read um, period dramas and things like that. Uh, there are very long conversations, interesting themes and topics this book address. The main theme in this book is essentially the idea about how outer beauty fades, how our, you know, image is temporary, it withers, we grow old, and how, we need to come to terms with that idea. The characters in this book are very very self-conscious about their image, especially the main character. Um, and he, in the beginning, he just freaks out when he just has a conversation with another character and understands the nature of us, essentially. And he starts freaking out. He goes through sort of this his own spiral, and he eventually sort of comes to terms with it. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. Um, you mostly have just conversations between dialogues between characters, but you also do have some serious stuff like there is murder in this book as well. So it's gonna be interesting. I don't want to say who it is, um, but yeah, it's an interesting book to read. Like I said, if you haven't read, this book came out quite a while ago, obviously. So the writing style might get you off guard a little bit, especially if you haven't read. But yeah, it's an enjoyable read. It's not too long, so it's a fun read. The next one, this is this is a very specific book because this one is actually based on a video game franchise, and for those who have played this game, might be surprised that there's a book based on the franchise as well. And if you haven't played the game franchise, that's fine as well. So this is something that I probably won't expect anyone else to read. But I thought it was a great read, and it's Assassin's Creed Forsaken by Oliver Borden. About Borden, yes, yes. I was surprised. I'm a fan of this game franchise. I was playing this game for like over a decade. I didn't realize they actually had books. Now the books are actually based on the franchise, so they sort of collect stories that happen in between some of the games, which were not being told in the storyline of the games. Now this one particularly is interesting because it focuses on a villain that is considered one of the best villains in the game franchise, and that's Hayden Kenway. Actually, I might argue he's the best villain in the game franchise. Um, so this focuses on his story from his childhood all the way to, you know, all the way to him becoming a Templar Grandmaster, and his journey. Because we did get to see parts of his journey in Assassin's Creed 3, but um, but this kind of goes more into it. It also goes more into his childhood, his life with his father Edward Kenway, who was the pirate in Black Flag, and the tragedy surrounding that, and what happens to his sister. He had a sister, and yeah, it also goes to the sequences. If you have played Assassin's Creed 3, you might remember the scenes where you get to play as Hayden, how he recruits a team to find a Templar artifact in the U.S. colonies. How, yeah, so this takes place during the U.S. Revolution, American Revolution. You do see some historical figures in this. If you're someone who's interested in just history, you'll still be interested in this story. I feel like, even if you have no idea who these characters are, especially if you're someone who's into the American, Revolution, independence, and all that. So essentially, Haytham, this is like a first-person point of view where Haytham sort of writes story like a journal. Each chapter is like a journal entry. Um, the way Oliver Borden captures the characters, the essence of the characters, is so great, and the setting, it feels so good. The writing style is so great. It's an easy read, but also at the same time, the way that he captures in his style is just so great. So it really hits you. Um, there are some really interesting sequences that I was like, holy shit, it's great, it's crazy. Um, yeah, so I don't want to really get into too much detail for this book. I mean, it's a very, like I said, it's a very specific book based on a game. I just saw this at a book sale, and I just like, I've been playing this game for 10 years, more than 10 years, and I did not realize they had books. There's actually a few other books in the series as well, so this takes place during that time period, and the main character, Salem Kenway. The other books, I believe, are based on other time periods and having other main characters. I believe there's one for the Auditore as well. Um, but yeah, it's a good one. It's a good read. Okay, that's the last book that I want to mention. It's not really a book; it's a graphic novel, and I kind of ended the year with this novel. I read this off online first, and then I just thought I had to buy this book. Like, this is the one book, one graphic novel I have to buy and keep, just because I'm a really fan of the artwork and the concept of this graphic novel. Now, this one came out in 1989. If you're a Batman fan, you probably already know what I'm talking. Probably already know what I'm talking about. It's Batman: Arkham Asylum, a series house on Sears Earth, written by Grant Morrison, and art by Dave McKean. This is, I've read a lot of Batman comics, and hopefully I'm planning to do a video at some point in the future, on all the comics that I read and what I thought about it. This one stands out. This It's not your typical Batman story here. You don't have your Batman, you know solving crime and kicking, basically saving the day, getting the bad guys. This is different. This is a trip. This Batman, essentially what happens is Arkham Asylum is the prison where you have all the Batman's rogues gallery villains, housed in. Basically, the inmates in the prison takes control of the prison, and they demand Batman to come. That's the one demand they're making. So Batman goes to the Arkham Asylum to try to fix the situation. And once he goes in there, once he enters Arkham Asylum, um, the Joker actually invites him in. The journey from there is just, it's a psychological trip. It's not, it just really gets you, it just really questions, um, the morality of Batman, and just essentially this book is where Batman is sort of hanging off a cliff, right? He's really hanging on there, and if he falls, he's going insane, right? If he doesn't fall, he's gonna stay sane. So it's like he's at the edge. It's such a great, the artwork by Dave McKean is what really uh, stands out. The way that he portrays his journey through the asylum as he meets each of his villains. We actually do encounter some of Batman's famous villains, um, and the way that Dave McKean portrays it is so great. I mean, I can show you how the Joker looks like. I mean, just at look how evil and menacing the Joker is. I mean, his artwork is so crazy. I mean, look at these images, right? This is one of those books you have to read. You definitely have to read under a lampshade or a candlelight. Like it, that's that's the essence. Um, I just don't want to talk more about this book because I really want to do a video on this book. Hopefully, sometime in the future, um, if I get a chance. But you know, it's this is the book that I ended the year with, and I thought this book really needed a spot in this list, even though it's not a book, what's a graphic novel. But if you're into graphic novels, let me know. It's definitely something that I'm interested in. So yeah, that's how I ended my year. I started my 2023 year with Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn. So this is fantasy, right? I've heard of Brandon Sanderson. I've heard great things about him. He does great work on sci-fi fantasy, mostly fantasy. So I thought I wanted to get into his work, and I thought I started with Mistborn. I was actually looking for some videos, and I heard that this is probably a great place to start. Um, I've been reading Mistborn somewhere in the middle. The story is really interesting so far. Essentially, it's about imagine a world where the bad guy has won, like the villain has won, and it's been like centuries. There's an empire he's built, and like how people have been living under his oppression, and every revolution since he ascended the throne was just quelled. No one can just rebel. Like it's just useless. Like the no one dares to rebel because it's for them it feels like it's pointless because it's hard to rebel. But this book focuses around a group of characters who try to get him out of the seat. Uh, so it's interesting, and the magic system in this is pretty interesting as well. This is something I might probably also talk about in the future. Fantasy stories are just massive and crazy. There's a lot of things to unpack, a lot of interesting tropes and themes and magic systems to sort of uncover and get into. So hopefully this is something maybe I might talk about in the future. And once I finish reading this, I might do a review on it. But this is part of a trilogy, so that's that's the ride that I'm part of now. Yeah, this is where I'm right now, and that's that's all of it. That's all the books that I read in 2022. I know it's not a lot. I do not read books at a rapid pace. I take my time. Uh, in between, I would also read graphic novels online, comics, and things like that. So I sort of switch back and forth. Hopefully this year, maybe at the end of the year, at some point, I might do another lineup of the books that I read this year. So uh, if that works out, if any of this works out. And if you enjoyed my rambling so far, if you're still here, great. I'm greatly appreciated. And let me know what your thoughts and comments on any of these books. If you have read any of these books, let me know what you think about it. Did you like it? Whether you hate it, doesn't matter. This is my opinion based on each book. I enjoyed all of these books. If I were to rank these books, I just couldn't rank. I just can't rank these books. It's just every book in of itself is special. It's great. I hate to rank books. It's just it doesn't work with me. But I enjoyed these books. But if you think you have a ranking, if you prefer some books over the others, let me know as well in the comments. And yeah, that's about it. And I hope y'all having a great day. And let's hopefully I'll come back for another video and see you guys later.